to the show. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Okay, my name is Angela Reis, and I am a pre- and postnatal yoga teacher and doula.
And what brought you to Vegas?
I grew up here, so I've been here for a long time.
Yeah, so you were born here?
No, I was born in Arizona, but we came when I was young. But I grew up here, went to school here.
Okay, very cool. And what do you normally do to spend your time in Vegas?
Right now, it's staying cool. Just like to hang out. I'm a homebody. I like to hang out at home. I like to eat. Vegas has a lot of good food opportunities.
What are your favorite restaurants?
My favorite restaurants. Goodness, there's so many. And I always eat at the same places. I like Frankenfina's Cocina.
Oh, I haven't checked. Is that a Italian restaurant?
No, it's a Mexican restaurant,
Okay.
but it has like a New Mexican kind of flair to it. So it's like very savory. I find a lot of like Mexican restaurants to be a little salty. So I feel like it's like kind of savory spiced.
Okay.
I like them. There's some good like hand pulled noodles. Yeah, there's one by my house that I like. It's called, I think it's like Shang Mian, Mian.
Oh, is that the one on?
They have two locations. They have a Flamingo, and then they have one on the over by me.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah,
Very good spot.
very good. Can't go wrong with like pho. Then there's like pho everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, we love it. That's one of the most surprising things about coming here to Vegas is how good the food was and how many different options that you had.
Yeah.
Here's another gripe about Vietnamese food too, though. Sometimes, if you just like want a good banh mi, not all the places have it. So you have to like there's like a really good search of like where if you want a banh mi and pho, you can't always get it at one place. It has to be like strictly pho, or there's sometimes both.
Yeah. I mean, I'm biased. Mom makes the best pho. Yeah.
Yeah, I had that in Georgia with one of my friends. He's Hmong, and he introduced me to pho. And I
Interesting.
thought, this is amazing, the soup. And we used to eat there like once a week.
Okay.
But you could tell that place was legit because the tablecloths were like kids' tablecloths that had bears on them. And then it was obviously a restaurant from something else before that was never finished renovating.
I like it.
Oh, it was great. I really miss that place. You've actually been there, haven't you?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
So let's tell us more about what you do.
What I do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
My passion is teaching yoga. So I teach pre- and postnatal yoga. I'm also trained in fertility yoga and yoga for pelvic health. And right now, my focus is to get more teachers locally in the Valley trained so they can also teach pre- and postnatal yoga throughout town.
So how does pre- and postnatal yoga different than traditional yoga?
Well, it's catered to the pregnant body and the pregnant experience, which is quite, you only give, how many times does a woman give birth in her life? Like, 1, 2, maybe 3 times.
Yeah. In general, like it's just a special experience, right?
Yeah, it's a special experience.
And then what about what's a doula? For those who don't know what a doula is.
A doula is an emotional and physical support person. And there's different types of doulas. So there's doulas for fertility, there's doulas for birth, postpartum, death. So they help you navigate through that experience. Kind of like you would hire a personal trainer to help you meet your goals at the gym. Similar to a doula, they would help you meet your goals through whatever transition that you're going through.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't actually know that doulas actually help available during death too. That's actually interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But during like a birthing process, like what can you describe kind of what that person does or like how you support an individual during that birthing process?
So for my clients, I start with education. So first we meet prior so I can understand what their goals and expectations are going into birth. And if they don't take a childbirth education class, I kind of fill in those gaps for them so they understand the birth process and their options. and then go to the actual physical birth, which birth can vary in time. The average birth is 14 hours. Now, for a lot of people, that's a lot longer, especially if you were having induction or medication. It could make birth go longer than that period of time. So supporting the client, through the whole process and helping them navigate through making certain decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you know about that profession, and then what made you want to go into that profession?
So I found out about doula work after I had my first son. When I found out I was pregnant, my friend was like, you need to get a doula. Actually, I knew about doulas beforehand because I had watched the documentary, The Business of Being Born. So they kind of touched on it. And then when I got pregnant, my friend was like, you need to have a doula. Here's my friend. So I got in contact with her. And so she was my doula for my first birth. And so that was kind of my first taste of what a doula is and what they do.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's different, choices when you decide to give birth. What are those choices in terms of, if you want to tell us more about, is it a hospital, which is traditional, and the others home births? And can you tell us, generally, what kind of choices you have and options you have if you don't want to give birth at a hospital?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of choices when it comes to giving birth, and it also depends on what your circumstances are. If you have any high risk things that you or your providers are concerned about, the first choice would be hiring a care provider. So here in the U.S., most typically people hire an OB. OBs are surgeons. They're trained to do surgery. In other places, specifically in Europe, a lot of them use midwives, either nurse or even a certified midwife, a home birth midwife. So midwifery is also would be the second option from the OB. Less popular is a general doctor, which we don't really see general doctors. We don't see general doctors hardly at all, I don't think, anymore, but definitely not for giving birth. For the midwives, there's two types of midwives. There's a home birth midwife, and then there's a nurse midwife. Nurse midwives in the U.S. work under an OB, and they work in a hospital. And then the home birth midwives obviously deliver at home or a birth center. So that would be the first way is which provider route am I going to go down? And then when it comes to the birth process, some choices to think about are what tests, the testing. Commonly, you test for gestational diabetes, GBS, Group B strep, which they do further along. So those are conversations that you would want to, talk to your provider. What is this test for? What kind of results do they give me? What is the false negative? So those are some choices. Specifically with the gestational diabetes test, that one's a little controversial because a lot of people say that the drink, so they have you fast so they can test your blood sugar, and they give you this orange drink. And the orange drink, a lot of people say are filled with chemicals, and it's not good or healthy for you. It's basically like a really thick, syrupy sugar drink. And, so there's a little bit of controversy, you would say, in the birth community. Is the drink safe? Is there an alternative to the drink? What if we don't take the drink? In Europe, in some countries, they don't do that test at all. So, in America, we tend to be a little over tested, I would say.
So what would you say would be the pros and cons of going with either type of those midwives or going with a doula? If you were to compare and contrast those.
The doulas will help you wherever you give birth. So they don't deliver, they don't do medical. If you're having especially if you're having a hospital birth, I would strongly encourage having a doula. If you're having a home birth, you can have a doula. Doulas are helpful in any birthing situation because, again, they don't provide medical care.
Okay. And then the different types of midwives?
There's 3 main entries. So I know I talked about the nurse midwife, and the nurse midwives, they go through nursing school and then they take it's like a master's degree in midwifery. And yeah.
I like it.
The CNM, CNM is a certified nurse midwife. The CPM, the certified professional midwife, they would take a training course, they would do an apprenticeship, and then they would take a test to, to certify themselves as a certified professional midwife. And then there's the last one is the direct entry midwife, which we don't see. There are some, but we don't see that as much. And those are kind of like the lay midwives, like a granny midwife, kind of what you would think like, I want to say like a long time ago, but, like 100 years ago, you had the woman, in the community that just delivered babies, and she had a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
But but it's not, it could be formal, but not necessarily formal.
Mm-hmm. So through that process of working with your client, what's the timeline in terms of like when you're working with them? So like beginning of when they get pregnant and all the way to the actual birth, and then a week afterwards, 2 weeks afterwards, or just kind of give us that timeline.
So it depends. I've had a varying timeline. I've had people hire me like right away, first trimester, like, want to get that done and over with. And then I've had people hire me like, I'm 38 weeks. I'm going to give birth in 2 weeks. Will you be my doula? Mm-hmm. I've had that happen. Most people hire, I would say, around like the 20-week mark, about halfway through. Because when you're pregnant, you kind of go through these 3 stages. The first stage is, I'm pregnant, right? Like you have to let that sink in. And then the second stage is, I'm going to have a baby, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, this is real. I can feel baby move. It's obvious now. And then the last stage is, I'm going to be a parent. So usually it's when I'm in that I'm going to have a baby stage is when people start feeling like this is real and start making those kinds of decisions about hiring a doula, taking a childbirth class, or making any changes.
Now, so a childbirthing class is usually offered, at various places and such. Yes. But what can one expect at a childbirthing class? Is it, this is just where you're supposed to go, or is it more like this is what you're like? Be ready for your hands to be squeezed from your partner because it's going to be so painful, or like what's that process like?
I would say it varies on the instructor and their training. In hospitals, most of the childbirth classes are taught by the nurse, like the nurse in charge. Mm-hmm. So that's not their full-time job. They have nurse duties and they do other things. So I think their main focus is getting people familiar with the hospital. Mm. Out of hospital childbirth classes, that's going to depend on the instructor and if they have a specific like style. Like Lamaze is a specific type of childbirth class. Really popular right now is hypnobirthing, which focuses on hypnosis. And there's a few other like method type, in that you're going to get a little bit more comprehensive education, and then you'll be given whatever their method is to help promote relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some things that you've learned along the way that you've been pretty surprised about, or things that you realize maybe other people should know that they don't know?
About birth or in general?
About birth, and then maybe in general too, as far as being a doula and going through that process with multiple people.
Yeah. I would say, birth is just so different in unpredictable no matter like how many kids you've had. So if if you've had one, the second birth and pregnancy experience could be totally different. I would say for a new or first time mom, definitely explore your options and learn. I know as a first time mom, I think it's really overwhelming because there is a lot. There's, it's a lot, and we don't talk about it in our society. We don't talk about birth, and I think there's a lot of fear around birth, probably because we don't, have a conversation. It's not a normal thing. It's almost like pathologized. Mm-hmm. But I think, taking a childbirth class and even learning from different people, reading different books, because sometimes if you just, I think, do one thing, you're like, well, I took the class and it didn't work or whatever, and, the birth went sideways, then I think people internalize that and blame themselves. I think just, being open to different possibilities, and I think hearing it from different people helps, different sources, mm-hmm. different experiences. Don't just set yourself up for one type of, unicorn birth, really, broaden it.
And what about from learning from being a yoga instructor, from especially working with prenatal and postnatal? Like what has that experience been like, learning and things that you've learned and you wish more people knew about?
I wish more people knew about their pelvic floor. I wish more people knew that your pelvic floor is, even though I think birth exacerbates it, it's not the cause of pelvic floor dysfunction. I find that usually it's a combination of things. It's it's what you were doing before. It's the high heels you were wearing. It's your posture. It's the driving. It's your regular activity. Mm-hmm. And I think we've normalized pelvic floor dysfunction a lot too. Like, after you have a baby, you just pee. Like, that's normal. Like, it's common, but it's not normal.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's something we say very often. So.
Even with pain, like, oh, I have low back pain. Like, I'm like, yes, it's common. It's common in pregnancy. It's not normal. It's a sign of something else.
Yeah, we totally agree. In our practice, we see the same thing. A lot of times, too, people always want to attribute something not working or being hurt to, oh, I did this thing. And
yes.
They have this cute just so story to tell you why it is.
Yes.
But then when you look at how they're sitting down and they're like completely like hunched over, or
yes.
They have a bed they've slept in for 20 years that has a huge crater in it, and they can't
yes.
figure out why their back hurts.
Yes. And I will say, even as a yoga teacher, I'm very aware of my posture. I'm very aware of what I'm doing, and I still have bad habits. You know what I mean? I'm not perfect. So I think that's a valuable lesson, that here I am and I know and I'm aware, and it's still challenging for me. So we can be gentle with ourselves.
Is that a tough sell sometimes for your clients when you tell them, hey, it's those shoes that you're wearing, or it's the position in your car?
For sure. Or when we're working on like things like breathing, I think people like want to do more. Like they want to, especially postpartum, like, I think they want to get their body back. They want to, get into those planks and get into that boat pose and, do complicated things, which I think is great, but your body might not be ready for those things. And especially if you weren't doing them before, like.
Right. Wait till after traumatic experience and then try new stuff.
Right,
sure.
Exactly.
What kind of breath work do you do with your patients?
I mostly teach thoracic breathing or lateral breathing for my clients because they, we got big bellies. Yeah.
And so what does that mean? Because I think that's actually a big thing that we teach too. And so
yeah,
if you were to describe that and why you teach that to folks, what benefit does that bring?
Okay. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So when I did my yoga teacher training, we had a lot of emphasis on belly breathing, which I think there's a benefit to, all different types of breathing styles. There's there's a benefit, there's a purpose for it. But specifically for my clients because, you know, our bellies are getting larger and then coming back. The lateral breathing, I find, in comparison to the belly breathing, it doesn't put as much stress on the pelvic floor.
And abdomen too, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about the growth of that, it's expanding that way. So I think that's really great to hear from that. And what would be the experience like? You know, if somebody wanted to work with you and doing yoga, what does that look like? Is it mostly class setting, or do you have individual teaching? Or can you tell us more about like, if someone wanted to work with you while they're in general? I have weekly classes, and then I also do one-on-one classes for people who want more, or who have a busy schedule, or just want the convenience of not leaving their home. So you see people online as well?
Yes. Yeah. So I should be more clear. So we have group classes, private classes, and then the group classes are also online, as well as I can do a virtual private as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have lots of options.
Mm-hmm.
I think the group class would be really encouraging for people, especially since you get to hear everyone else's experiences and kind of contrast and compare what everyone has going on.
Yes. Yes.
Do you notice much of a difference between that and then doing it one-on-one? Like, would you recommend one more than the other?
No, I think it just depends on what your needs are and what your lifestyle is.
Have you noticed within your classes that the women have developed friendships?
Oh, yes, absolutely, and I really encourage that, because, you know, transitioning to motherhood could be a very isolating thing. A lot of mothers experience perinatal mood disorders, so like anxiety, depression, you know, and especially with COVID, just the general isolation. You know, we're finding people are having babies older, and sometimes not your friends aren't having babies. So, you know, now we have to navigate a whole new landscape. And again, that's why this time is very special, because, you know, you don't do it very often in your life. And then you are kind of doing, in our society, you're doing it alone. You know, we're away from family. Our friends may not have kids. You know, figuring, do I go to work? Do I stay home? And, you know, how are we gonna, you know, figure out this jigsaw puzzle?
Mm-hmm.
So what's something that you've learned that you wish you knew sooner?
Just do it when you're not ready. I think, you know, I spent a lot of my life like asking for permission to do stuff. I know this is not really birth related, but
no, it's fine. It can be about anything.
Yeah.
And what got you into yoga?
What got me into yoga? I started yoga in college, and it helped tame the crazy. I was never really athletic before, but I appreciated the physical and the mental challenge. I think that's what really drew me in.
Oh yeah, and and think about yoga in general. It's that mental aspect of continuing to challenge, because you can always increase, you know, times or holds, or, you know, there's lots of things. And I think anything in any fitness, it's your ability to focus on the physical, but as much as you can challenge that mental aspect. And I think a lot of sports or physical activities actually do have that mental thing too that's incorporated. Like, for example, like rock climbing or CrossFit. Like, those are all things that you can challenge yourself physically, but the mental aspect is where I think yoga has a little bit more of that like wound in, if you will.
Yeah, it's built in to it. That makes me think, you know, I get a lot of sometimes when you get like someone who's really physically fit, I don't think that they realize the mental challenge of yoga. Like, yes, holding an advanced posture can be both physically and mentally hard, but try just sitting there and doing nothing.
Like without picking up your phone?
Try just sitting and doing nothing. And I find for a lot of people, that's the hardest pose. Is just to relax.
Yeah, I think more people need to learn how to relax nowadays.
Yeah.
It seems to be, it's actually tough with a lot of people that we see as well. It's like
Yeah.
people just don't know how to calm down anymore.
Yeah.
They definitely know how to drink 4 to 5 cups of coffee, though.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah.
So you're saying something, you had a good quote during the break. You were saying something about issues change when you have kids. How did you phrase that?
So I would say issues change, but whatever that you dealt with or didn't deal with before you had kids, it's only going to be highlighted once they arrive. And especially as they get older and you really are into the parenting thing, because kids are really good at reflecting back, any bad habits or any kinds of triggers or, emotional things. So I really encourage people, if you didn't have a good therapist on hand, if you're not like already in therapy, again, because therapy is not something that you have to like do for your entire life. You don't have to do it all the time. But, I always encourage, have your care providers, have your support ready before you have your baby, because you don't want to be looking for help in crisis. So have a therapist that you like, that you have a relationship with before you have your baby. Have a lactation consultant if you plan to breastfeed that can help you with feeding. Have a physical therapist ready, because again, you don't want to be looking for these things when you have a small child and when you're feeling stressed. We never make good decisions when we're in those types of situations. And then it helps us to better plan for it too, financially and time-wise. And
was parenting very different than you expected?
I didn't realize, I guess, how like spiritual parenting would be. It is kind of like a spiritual experience if you're really like doing the work. And because again, like I said, like they bring out, like I was like, I thought I dealt with this, why am I feeling this way? Oh, maybe I did deal with it, but it's coming up again.
It's interesting too, like when I think about kids, right, as they're like yelling and screaming and doing these things. I think you made a really good point on the break about distractions. Like, so what do you typically tell your clients about how to deal with distractions?
So I have taught, I typically teach in non-traditional settings, and I have taught in gyms. I've taught in all kinds of noisy places or people walking by and having appointments, and it's all part of the practice. Because we don't have the luxury, most of us, at any time just to like stop everything and go to the mountains and meditate. So it's about finding that inner peace within the chaos around.
I love that.
Yeah. I think I read that somewhere, but yeah, it's true.
And we can't always have like the perfect environment, right? I think this is just in life, like we can't just like sculpt this thing that's just like we're gonna have all these research all these things and then never do it. And like you mentioned earlier, it's like just actually taking action is where you'll just learn along the way and kind of accept those imperfections as part of the process, right?
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of my early adult life like looking for the perfect time or the perfect mate and the perfect, like really wanting everything to be a certain way, and sometimes you just got to do it.
What's something big that you've learned from parenting? This is you're going on
3.
Number 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the big takeaways with parenting?
I think the biggest thing is just, learning to love yourself and reparent yourself. Because, again, like it goes back to whatever we didn't deal with. And, my parents, they weren't terrible, but they weren't, perfect either. So, going through that and, figuring out what it is that I want to do and, how do I want to raise these people. Because that's what we're doing. We're not having babies. We are raising people. We're raising adults, like to go out there and, do something. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So what's something that you've been working on, whether it's professionally, personally, physically, or mentally, that you're excited about?
Well, right now I'm growing a human. I am 37 weeks, so I'm preparing for that. That's my big project right now. And just getting my yoga teacher training off would be my next big project that I'm working on.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How far along in that process are you for the yoga?
I'm probably not going to do a training till next year. I'm just working on credentialing right now, and that looks like it's going to be about 30 more days right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
So, kind of. It's been a long time coming. It's been something that I've wanted to do just because I feel like there is such a need in our community for highly trained prenatal yoga teachers. Because right now there's no prenatal yoga teacher training. I had to go out of state to get my training and look at a lot of different places. Because again, this time in your life is special, and what's going through your body is, different. And just taking a teacher training or even just like a personal training, they don't go over a whole lot of detail into pregnancy and birth, and a lot is happening in people's bodies.
That's awesome. So it'll be local then. You have it
Yeah.
as an in-person
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what's something you want to leave listeners with?
Love yourself.
No, I love that. I think that's
yourself,
the only way that you can take care of other people is to take
Yeah.
care of yourself.
Love yourself and be gentle with yourself. I think a lot of us are too hard on ourselves, especially me. So I could take my own advice.
I think I need to hear that too.
Yeah.
So how can people find you, Angela?
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is prenatalyogalalasvegas.com. You can go to my website, prenatalyogalalasvegas.com.
Awesome. And we'll
Yeah.
put those in the show notes for anybody wanting to check her out.
Awesome.
We appreciate your time. Appreciate your wisdom.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming in and talking with us today.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you for listening to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the time with our guests as much as we did. It would help us out so much if you could share, subscribe, or review our podcast, or any combination of the three. Thanks again, and remember to take care of yourself.